We are live now. There we go. So right now we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and I'm gonna hook this phone up right here and try to hit Instagram too. You guys are mostly on Facebook and Instagram, right? If I remember correctly.
Mostly, yeah.
All right. Let's see if I can get this going. So how's your day been? Busy?
See, it's crazy.
Always, right?
Well, we started harvest, so we're harvesting almonds, sweet potatoes, and plus we're trying to we finally got some bottle caps in. We were back ordered on forever because of COVID, so
right.
It's crazy just trying to play catch up. But we did get our new bar tops in, which I don't know if you can see this.
Oh, dude. That is, I can see it. That's your logo. I love that logo. I love it.
And then, it's on the bottom. We got a little writing that.
Oh, man, that's nice.
Yeah. They've been on order for a long time. They finally came in.
Finally. All right. So hopefully this is working. They can see me. So hopefully that's going to work.
Is this live and then you play it later? You pre-record it?
You can. No, it's both. It's live. Both. We're live right now. We're live right now. We're BS. They're watching us BS. So, okay. Now we got people from Canada, people from Australia already in here. What's up, Fee? What's up, Peter? What's going on? Raven. We got Texas in the house, too. Everybody. This is David. And it's Souza, right?
It's Souza.
Okay. Well, how do you want to say? Because I'm Portuguese, too. And I grew up, here in Souza all the time.
Yeah, but that's how we've always said it. But
Souza?
When I've been to Brazil and Portugal, people are like, it's
Souza.
Souza. It's Souza. I'm like, so I grew up with Souza.
Say okay. Then I was right. I was like,
yeah,
this is Souza. Okay, because I watched Independent Joe's live that he had with you, his interview.
Yeah, so I don't ever correct people because you don't know. But yeah, I grew up with Souza. That's pretty much how people.
Okay, right on. Okay, so I wasn't wrong, right?
No.
Okay, right on. So, like I said, my grandparents, my grandfather immigrated from Portugal, from the Azores island Pico.
That's funny. So my uncle, or I should say, my godfather, he's from Pico. I'm from. My grandparents are from my grandmother's side, Terceira, and my grandfather's side, Gracioso.
One of my best friends is from Terceira. He just went there, I don't know, 3 weeks ago to see bullfight. We've been traveling hitting bullfights after the festas, right? It's got to be after the festas. Yeah. In California, anyway. It's a Saturday in Portugal.
Yeah, exactly. It's every Saturday.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. It's way different. Have you been over there to see any of them?
I haven't been to the Azores. I've been, but we're thinking of going this next summer. So my parents have both been, and my grandparents, but I've been to Brazil a bunch, and then my trip to the Azores got canceled. But I plan on getting back out there because I want to. I've been to Europe, but like I said, I didn't end up getting to the Azores, and we still have some family back there. So I want to see where my great grandfather came from. And crazy to think he left at 16 years old by himself on a boat to come over here.
Yeah, isn't it? Can you imagine nowadays? I think back then a 16-year-old was way more capable of surviving on their own.
Yeah,
but today,
a good friend of ours,
the internet and they're done.
Yeah. Well, a good friend of ours just passed, and of my dad's, and we were talking to his daughter, and Bob's mom came over from Germany when she was 9 years old by herself. Her parents put her on a boat to meet a family in California, at 9. I mean, I can't even imagine as a parent putting my 12-year-old son Corbin on a boat and being hey, we'll see you.
Yeah. Hey, he's just gonna pave the way for us. We'll be right behind you. Oh my goodness. So hey, I know these some of these people in different countries. So they like Australia, England, Canada, everyone, even the country of Texas, the Republic of Texas, right?
Republic of Texas.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Dude, I want to someday. I'll be there.
Yeah.
Someday. Hey, I got
I keep praying California's going to end up being more like Texas, but it
oh my gosh,
doesn't happen yet.
oh my goodness, not yet. Not yet, man. It's when we were kids. I mean, how old are you?
I'm 47.
Okay, I'm 51. So when we were kids, we're way back when we were kids, it was a different time.
It was different, yeah.
Way different time. Where it makes when just looking at your website and going out to your distillery, just seeing the tractors and all that stuff. My grandfather owned a dairy here in Tracy.
Okay.
And grew up with a shovel in my hands, calluses and, alfalfa, feeding cows, all that stuff. So when I see what you're doing, it makes me, they've passed and don't have the dairy anymore. So it makes me miss it. It makes me miss it a lot. I know how hard it is just being any kind of farmer, let alone a dairyman, but any kind of farmer in California.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. There's an appreciation that getting away from it actually helps you appreciate it. Because I grew up, I was out in the field at 7 years old, moving watermelons, driving tractor by 10, and it's just like all summer after school, and then when I got into this, started doing this, and I couldn't afford a salesperson, so I had to go out and do all the sales, and I was bouncing around in San Francisco and LA, and it's like, it's like I love the city. There's things I love about it and the conveniences. But after staying there a lot, it's like, I'm a country boy. Like as much as I thought, I was like, I love the city. Yeah, I love things about the city. But
I like to visit the city.
Yeah, but raising it, and from a perspective of a single person, it's different. Once you have kids, it just totally changes your mentality of
of course.
Of growing up, but yeah, man, we have a great state here. I just hope it turns itself around before it's too late. We really do have, as far as agriculture, we have great cities, we have food mecca. Like it's just everything. We're close to the ocean. We got the mountains. We literally have everything you could want, except our taxes and our politics. Our political system is just
California is so beautiful. It attracts all these good people and all the rest too that want to come ruin it. Yeah. Right. Hey, we got. If you don't mind, I'm gonna jump into some questions. We got, like I said, we got people. We're worldwide.
Awesome.
So, and because I know they want to
popularity.
Yeah. No, because they heard I've been publicizing and put it out there that David's, I was saying Souza, but I'm going to say Souza now. Souza is going to be on. I've been pumping Corbin Cash up so much ever since my wife and I went to the distillery early this year. I couldn't believe it with the 1917. I'll get into it. But let's start asking you some questions real quick, because if you don't mind, I think some people from the chat, they're already trying to ask questions.
Yeah.
So we'll take some of those if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, perfect.
I mean, I think we kind of covered this. Your family immigrated from Portugal, and mine's from Portugal as well. And is yours from mainland Portugal or the Azores?
Azores, yeah.
Okay. That seems to be most people I know that are from Portugal, at least here in the valley, or from the Azores.
Yeah,
seems to be.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, so okay. Here's one. Which product do you produce the most of, and which is it your favorite product, or is there a different product that's your favorite product? Just don't produce as much of it.
So believe it or not, we produce the biggest thing we produce is actually our sweet potato vodka on a production level but in a sense of like sales, it's definitely the rye whiskey has. I mean, we're always producing rye, putting it away, but
Right.
vodka was the thing we started with, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
still kind of that bigger mover, but it's definitely
Right.
not our focus. So rye is my passion, which is funny because I was not a whiskey drinker per se when I got into this. I was just really got introduced into really good alcohol, was what gave me the idea to do this back in the day. I'm like, oh, there's actually stuff I like.
Yeah.
Maybe I can actually make
Bonus
from our farm, right? And it took a gentleman in Las Vegas to really teach me how to drink. And I'm like, oh, this makes sense. But I was always a vodka drinker because, you know, they were easy sipping. You could make cocktails with it. And then but I was like, man, I don't like all this sugary stuff. So he's like, you got to just drink good vodka on the rocks with a lime. And
no thanks.
Yeah. So that's what got me into like, oh, okay, like this is something. Like he gave me a Kettle One. I was like, okay, this isn't terrible. And that was my like aha moment of like, maybe we can do something.
Yeah.
Through that transition though, it's like I got introduced into good whiskeys and good gins and good everything, tequila. And then I'm just like, man, I was just like on overload. And so I was just like,
right.
Okay, I gotta learn how to do this. So then I bought a book off the internet, built a still, and started in my garage.
So dude, I love that.
Yeah, it was. It was just more of a passion project because everybody was like, "Oh, were you a brewer?" You know, because everybody kind of goes from brewing.
Yeah.
To it's like, no, I wasn't a beer drinker. Like, I did drink spirits, but I wasn't necessarily passionate about it because I grew up in the Valley, and growing up in the Valley, we drank SoCo and Coke and Jack.
Yeah, right.
That's how I grew up. What we grew up drinking. I'm like, dude, this is terrible. Why do people drink this?
Right.
But we were young and dumb, and that's what we did.
Yeah.
And then so then that's kind of was my journey after I had my businesses in Vegas, and that kind of changed my whole direction of what I was going to do in life, which was kind of funny.
Yeah, right. A big turn.
Yeah.
So we got a cheers here from Whiskey Wars. I don't know if you know Sean from Whiskey Wars, but he just went over 1,000 subscribers. He's going big time.
Oh wow.
He's going big. Cool. Yeah, on YouTube it's rough to get the subscribers. He's doing it. It was just last week.
Awesome.
So cheers to
that.
Right on. Yes, again, congratulations.
So to get back to your question.
Yeah. I'm gonna hit it again here.
The rye whiskey is definitely the 1917 is probably my go-to. I love our new single barrel 8-year. But like at the end of the day, like
this one.
Yeah, but the 1917 at the 123 proof, it's like you can drink it straight, you can drink it on ice, you can drink it in an old fashioned, and it's like ready to go. Even when the day is warm, I can pull out 1917, pour it, and I can drink. The 130 proofs and up, they're a lot, but they're great. I love them.
Yeah,
they're more specific on when you're going to drink those.
Yes. So we got Arizona just jumped in the house, and this person right here saying cheers to Whiskey Wars. That's my beautiful wife there, my bad axe wife, I like to call her. So all right, let's go. Let's move on here. Okay, so how big do you want to grow your brand, and where would you like it to go next? Because I got people from all over the states. Yeah. Why are you in Texas? What? Because I've sent them handshakes of this stuff, and they're like, whoa, where do I get this?
Yes. So honestly, we want to be a national. I mean, I would love to be a worldwide brand. That's how big I would love to be.
That's what I want to hear.
But realistically, national. We're working on that. I think my goal is to be. I look at Jack Daniels. I look at Jim Beam. Jack Daniels is is Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
Jim Beam is Kentucky. Like, even though there's all these other, I would love Corbin Cash to be that for California. And I feel like we continue on this path, we'll be able to do that. But it's expensive. It takes a lot of money. and it takes the correct distribution. We have, we are with Southern, so we're now with a big distributor, but getting the love for the small guy is tough. So it's a balancing act of, time, money, and distribution. And so I think now, and again, I think for whiskey drinkers, you have to do your due diligence. And yeah, it's great. A 4-year-old whiskey, a 5-year-old whiskey. I think we've got a lot of craft distilleries just releasing stuff too young. You just got to give whiskey time. And so I think we're finally there. We have 6, we have 8, and we have more of it now. It takes time to lay down barrels, right? And so, a lot of guys as newbies into the business, 15 years and we're newbies, right?
No, it's true, man. For your own juice, you got your own juice too. You're not sourcing it, which is incredible.
Put it away, and then honestly, it's as we struggled to sell vodka, which was our original product. You're like, man, this is hard. Like, how are we going to get this? So we were putting rye whiskey away, and we just kind of were putting it away. And then when we released our first, the Merced Rye, this one here.
Yeah, this guy.
We back in 2015, it literally sold out in 2 weeks, and we're like, oh, this is a different kind of problem. We didn't have that problem. And it was funny because rye whiskey in 2015 really wasn't a thing. Like there was, so we were kind of, and Whistle Pig kind of really helped pave that, that notoriety for rye whiskey. But as we, as we've grown, and I saw like, okay, whiskey's where it's at. Like we just got to continue to do this, and it's expensive to lay it down, but I think the best thing we did was take our time, because it's
for sure.
It's given us a good product. It's
proof is in the product for sure.
And so, it's, we definitely want to be a worldwide brand someday. That'll take time, but I think, we're definitely on the right track.
So while we're on we mentioned this bottle already. I know this is in there somewhere, just kind of a gee whiz question. These beautiful bottles, you see it you had a semi hand in designing this bottle, and you fully designed this bottle, right?
Correct.
Is that okay? So does that
this was a full custom bottle that we own the mold to,
which is a pretty cool bottle, actually. It looks like a decanter, actually.
Yeah.
But so my main question is, why the screw top? I'm just asking. Everyone's got their personal preference, but
no. So originally, like I said, our first product was vodka. So I never really intended. So a lot of people don't know this story. So, our first product being vodka, I never wanted to really be in the vodka business. Our goal was to create a sweet potato vodka, a clean, super easy to drink, and promote it in Las Vegas, sell it to an investor, and then take that and build the whiskey portfolio.
Okay.
The Corbin Cash brand.
Right.
And so I had, if you want to see the original, so this is High Roller vodka.
Oh, and that. Yeah, they got some dice on there. Oh, is that in an H, right?
It's like an H form in a 7.
I like it. Hey, I like it.
7 die, lucky 7.
Right, right on. I like it.
So this bottle was designed for this vodka, and we custom made it. If you've ever, it's a great holding grip.
It is.
It looks like a decanter.
Yeah.
But when you go back to the original design from the High Roller brand, this emulates the inside of a craps table. So
right. Okay. Oh, true. Yes, true. You're right.
That's where it came from.
Oh, that's cool.
Originally started with a screw cap. The High Roller brand, it kind of we didn't get it done in Vegas like we wanted, and essentially I had 20,000 bottles of glass sitting here that I had to do something with. Well, so then we sat down and we looked at it and we're like, you know what? How can we kind of not make this look so fancy, but make it more kind of crafty? Put a paper label on it. So we worked tirelessly to come up with something that we felt fit and that kind of looked, felt a whiskey brand. And then once we put whiskey in it and saw like how the knurls showed up with the whiskey, we're like, okay, this is good. But what's funny is the same glass company makes the 1917 bottle. And when I saw that, I'm like, I'm going to put something in that someday.
Dude, hey, that
finally did it.
This bottle combined with that script, that font, that script, I just think of old Westerns, John Wayne. I love the bottle before I even tasted what was inside. I'm like, usually, I mean, what happens a lot is it looks great and they're disguising something.
Yeah.
Hey, come buy the bottle. I'm like, oh, I completely love what's inside way better than the bottle. And this is one of my favorite. This is up there. I love the Smoke Wagon bottle too for the same reason.
Cool, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it just.
I just recently saw
West.
It's super cool.
Oh my gosh, and a new bourbon that came out, Frank August. I don't know if you've heard of Frank August or not.
I haven't.
It's fairly new. It's a big mystery about it, where it's distilled and all that stuff. It's just a clean little bottle. Okay. Nice, nothing to it, and it's meant to be used as a decanter after. Nice copper. It's that top must weigh a pound. Okay. It's pretty clean.
Cool.
It's pretty clean.
Check it out.
So, so I had a short conversation with you on Father's Day. I don't know if you remember me going there on Father's Day.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, yeah. So that's where I got this. Oh my gosh, this is one of the best days of my life. I got from my favorite rye, hands down, on the planet. If I didn't have another third left in my Stag Junior Batch 12, it'd probably be my favorite whiskey. This is incredible. But for Sarah, or whoever sent this to me with Bad Axe bourbon on it, oh my goodness, it touched me. I just did. I was like, this is cool. It's like a bucket list thing for me. It was really cool.
Well, we don't, for me, we don't get to connect with the fan. Like, it's like, this is how we get to connect. It used to be when I did the sales, I was out there in the forefront and I got to talk to a lot of people and see and so now I don't get to do that. So, when we see true fans and people really loving it,
oh my goodness,
it makes us, want to make more. So because it's at the end of the day, if people don't like your product, what are you going to do with it? So it makes me happy that other people like it. Cause again, coming from I was a partier and I drank, but I wasn't a connoisseur really until I got into the business. So I was like, I'm really going off of my palate, what we make here. And you just hope people like it. Cause you don't know, man, it's a crapshoot.
And you don't know when you're making all your own product and you're hitting that reboot button, it's years.
Yeah.
Years. And people that start I understand why companies or distillers, they want to start with MGP or something, a source product. I get it, but then there's that transition. All of a sudden, it doesn't taste the same. If people really liked it, then like you're not going to have that problem.
Yeah,
no, at least I don't foresee it.
No, it's no, we don't. It shouldn't be a problem because and things change when you scale, but not like that because again, that's the difference when you're even with we'll see different nuances in the rye from different fields, but when you're blending the barrels, you don't really see it. But as the distiller, even batches of sweet potato vodka will taste the difference coming off the still. And I always, when I first got into wine and people talk about the terroir and how it changes the wine, and I was like, this is all bullshit, but it's not. And even for whiskey and for vodka, we see the difference, especially when it's coming off the still, because that's at its rawest form. So before it's untouched, and we can actually taste the difference on certain fields from one to the other, which is kind of crazy.
So do I remember correctly that you use white corn?
We use white corn in the bourbon, yeah. And that's comes from here locally. They're kind of shirt tail relatives of mine. They live just down the street.
Oh, okay.
So we used to grow corn here and there. Never big farmers of corn. That's why I never made bourbon. But then they're like, oh, you should get some. We got some corn laying around. Why don't you make some vodka with it or bourbon and try to do this and that with it. So we messed with it, and it was really good. And I'm like, And so that's when we started toying with the bourbon, and and we were pretty stoked about the using the local corn. So
that is cool. It's all local stuff. I love it. In a short email back and forth, I was at least in conversations that I have, there's a comparison, I guess, rightly so, to Frey Ranch.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there as well, but I love seeing the tractors, the farms, the fields. For me, that's Americana. It is, I love it.
Well, it's part of your growing up, right? It's nostalgic, like you feel a piece of it. So, and it's I have not been to Frey Ranch. I do have a bottle of their bourbon. It's really good.
The single barrel is really good.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to try the single, but I mean, look, in our business, in any business, there's always a comparison, right? There's Coke, there's Pepsi. Right. Everybody has their favorite, right. But at the end of the day, it's kind of, and people, I would have never said this before I was in the business, but it's kind of comparing. You can compare them, but they're still different. We're both making whiskey, but the grains that they use, they're grown in Nevada, are completely different than what we grow here. So, and their aging is going to be different. Just like we can't age like they do in Kentucky. It's completely different. So we have to come up with our own styles, our own temperature controls. We have to monitor differently. So at the end, we're all making whiskey, but our inputs are different. Or probably the way we distill could be a little bit different, and the way we farm is different. So it's going to create different products.
So you probably answered this 5,000 times or more, but people are going to want to know, where did the name Corbin Cash come from?
Honestly,
I know the answer, but go ahead.
Sometimes I forget to tell people that. So, because I just assume everybody knows. So Corbin Cash is my son. He is the 5th generation. And so everybody's like, oh, okay, so that's your last name. And no, Souza's our last name, but it's spelled very close to the tequila, so we couldn't use our name. Souza tequila is just one letter different. So when I decided to make the whiskey, and everybody asked what came first. Well, what's funny is, so I trademarked his name before he was born, and then he was born on the day we first distilled, liquid came off the still. His mom's water broke. So I had to call somebody. I'm like, dude, we cooked the week before and I started distilling, and his mom calls, like, my water broke. I'm like, oh crap. Oh. I just got this juice coming off the still. So then I'm calling my manager. I'm like, get over here. I got to get to the hospital. It's funny. It was interesting.
We got a question here from Texas. Column or pot still?
So it's a hybrid. So it's a column pot. So we have a 660 gallon pot, and then it goes over to a column. So it's they call them hybrid still. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, I like that process, actually.
Yeah,
beautiful machine. Beautiful.
Yeah, and it gives a little more control. And it's funny because Sean and I were just comparing some of the 8-year, the single barrel you have with some of the 6-year, and it's funny how the notes on some of the older stuff, they're a little more like tobacco-y, and they have this like real rich flavor. Yeah. Well, what's funny is some of those were distilled on our smaller still that you saw in there. So originally so I didn't have that big still originally. Originally, all I had was the little 150-liter still. So we did everything on that little tiny still. And so that still has no controls on it. Where our big still, we have a lot more control of how we, like, the proof and everything. Before, it was just kind of like we had to do it at we were shooting for that 135 to 140 come off the still. And when it quit, we just had to stop. So with the new still, we can adjust it to keep it at that level longer. So nice. It's interesting to see some of the more rich flavor that's the older stuff has.
So good.
But it's so it was a good learning lesson, because I'm like, well, we can always mimic that, but at that time, we just had to do what we had to do because
Yeah,
there's
do
no
it.
adjustment on that.
Yeah, produce some juice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that
So-
was part of it too. That still, so what we would do on that still was it would take us 25 hours to distill a batch. And now we do that same batch in 6 hours. So,
whoa,
yeah.
That's light speed comparatively, huh?
Yeah. Just volume. It's just bigger, heating it up, bigger stuff. So, definitely less headache for sure.
So this is all the ryes you have out, I believe. Your regular Merced Rye. I got your
Correct.
1917. I got the 6-year and the 8-year.
Correct.
Do you have a favorite one of these, or is there something coming on the horizon? Maybe that's double oaked or something like that. Have you tasted that?
So we
10-year,
have
almost 11-year. You're saying?
Yeah, we have a 10-year. Well, depending on
You said it's going to be almost 11 by the time it actually
when
comes
the glass,
out, right?
Yeah. So we have a 10-year double oak. It's spent 6 years, 6 years in American oak, 4 years in French, and so we just tested it the other day. It's sitting at about 128 proof and super smooth.
Oh my gosh.
Little hints of, the French oak gives it a little bit of some different nuances to it. So I'll be interested to see what people think of it.
So the 1917 people, this is not a single barrel. This is a small batch, correct?
So so essentially the 1917 and the original rye, they're the same product, just released at 123 proof at barrel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you guys can get this, if you can get the Merced Rye, the regular Merced Rye and the high roller bottle, I'm going to call it the high roller bottle. If you can get that at night, if you like that at 90 proof, which is, I didn't know that it was the same juice until I watched that interview with Independent Joe. I was like, oh crap. I ran right out and got it. I'm like, it is. Son of a gun. It is. It's the same juice. But if you like this, you're going to like it even more pumped up to 123, right?
Yeah, 123.
123 proof. This is what I had at the very first, and I loved it. I'm like, okay. And then the last time I went on Father's Day, I don't remember her name. I'm sorry, one of the bartenders there made me an old fashioned with the 1917.
Yeah.
And that was delicious, man. I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I would have. And I like high rye in my old fashions, but I don't know why I wouldn't have done it. It's just like special to me or something. So all the special stuff I don't put in old fashions normally, but it was delicious.
Yeah, no, that's kind of my go-to cocktail. Even when I'm like, I need a drink, they make me an old fashioned with a 1917. But you got to be careful because it go down too damn easy.
Yesterday it happened. It may have happened to me yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't confirm it, but it may have happened to me yesterday. I'm like, oh yeah, it's really good at the time. Like, oh man.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go. Oh, hang in there.
Yeah.
But the 6 years, 132 proof, single barrel, and this was by far my favorite rye on the planet until I got this 6 year. I have a friend on TikTok, Sean Evans, his name, in California, El Cerrito store pick.
Yeah.
He got it to me and sent it to me. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is now my second favorite rye because this is my first. Then when we went down to your distillery on Father's Day, I didn't even have this bottle. You just let me taste some of your taster's bottle. I went, oh my goodness. Now this is my third favorite. I got a new number one. Within a month of each other, I had new number one. So these are my top three. I'm going to go 4. My top 4 favorite ryes. It must be the sweet potatoes. You get something. I don't know, but it's different and it's delicious. I mean, I can't.
Well, and that's
can't
what we hope.
Any more good stuff about it?
Yeah, and the Merced Rye, it has its own challenges, especially with drought and everything. But here it is drought tolerant, but that also, when we don't get a lot of rain, even though the rye produces, it ends up with a really low starch content. So I know there's been people that have tried to make whiskey from it, and they're just like, they're calling me for advice, and they're like, hey, how do you do this? And I'm like, man, that's like Coke calling Pepsi and saying, hey,
Yeah.
what's your secret? I'm like, well, I go, honestly, and I'm honest with them. I'm like, it works because I farm it. If I had to go buy Merced Rye to make whiskey, it wouldn't be cost effective. Same thing with sweet potato. That's why you don't see sweet potato vodkas out there, because it's too damn expensive to make. But it makes sense for what we do, because it's and so, and that was the thing. I wanted to be sustainable. I wanted to kind of keep our carbon footprint down, but also at the same time look at something for added value, because farming's getting hard. Like it's getting harder and harder and more expensive. So
oh my goodness, right?
And this is much more fun. Nobody wants to talk about sweet potatoes and pie.
This is
wants to talk about
Did you? I'm just asking. Did you do any interviews of just farming when you weren't making any whiskey?
Very few. It was typically like if there was something going on in agriculture, and then the news wanted to do something on whatever. But there are very few interviews on farming because people don't really care.
It's normally about how's the drought affecting you.
Exactly. Usually the drought or labor situations, something like that. It's never anything fun or educational. It's always it's always a downtrodden message of like, oh, what's going on in the world today. This is much more fun.
So if someone wants to talk to you about this, it's normally going to be fun.
Yeah, it's normally fun, right?
Yeah.
I see. I
don't know if you got anything to drink there. What's going on, man?
Yeah, I got a little.
What do you got there? What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a barrel pick, single barrel. It's not the El Cerrito barrel. It's actually from the local down in Camarillo.
Okay.
One of our favorite accounts down there. So he's bought 2 barrels from us, and his first one was one of my go-tos. I do love the El Cerrito barrel, by the way, too. But this one here was pretty phenomenal. And so I kept the bottle. Well,
right on.
There was a half bottle, and I said, I'm going to take the half bottle.
Hey,
so I don't have much left, as you can see. It's barely.
Oh, my goodness. And you know what? I don't know if this comes from the sweet potatoes or Merced Rye, but it's got almost a fluorescent orange copper color to it. It's
I think part of that color too is because we custom make our barrels here locally. We do a little bit deeper char, which might give it a little bit more color. And then again, remember, we have a lot of heat here, so we get a super intense color really early. The flavor isn't there, but the color, like in 2 years, the color's intense. It's crazy to see the color we get after 2 years, but it's because hell, it's 106 right now, right? I'm sweating.
Oh yeah. And I'm in my garage studio.
Yeah. And
so people that don't know, you're in the valley in California.
Yeah,
it's constant heat here. You're probably, is it like Texas where it's just aged like super fast aging, or it's always open? The woods.
So it's
not
aging
like
pretty quickly, but we thought originally. So what's funny is the bourbon will actually be ready quicker than the rye for whatever reason. We've tasted bourbon at 3 years here, and it's been really good. And we didn't release it, but bourbon, for whatever reason, it's 3 years, 4 years. It does really well. To me, the rye, we had some at 3. It just wasn't quite there. 4 years, it's good. And now 5 is kind of our standard. At least with the way the climate is here right now, 5 years kind of our minimum. And then as it gets older, we also have to worry about temperature control, because the heat will actually make the whiskey surpass the char in the barrel. And then we'll start pulling raw tannins from the raw wood back into the whiskey, and it can make it kind of bitter. So anything after 6.5 years, we really have to pay attention to it. So one of the rick houses, we insulated it so we could keep a more constant temperature. Initially we just go into a building that's non-insulated, non-humidity controlled, nothing, and we just let it do its thing. And then once we got to the 6-year mark, I started tasting a couple of barrels, and I'm like, man, they were at the top of the rick house where it's a little bit hotter, and I'm like, this is good, but it's got this little bit of a bite to it. I don't know what that is. So I took the barrel apart, and we started to notice that past the char, it was wet. And so what it was doing was getting into the raw wood, pulling that raw tannin back in. And then if your charcoal is all spent after 6 years, you don't have any way to get rid of that bitterness of what you might get that in the beginning, but it'll eventually, charcoal acts like a filter. That's what we do, right? You burn, you get the vanillas, but the reason it acts as a filter and it cleans the whiskey, you get the caramelization of the wood, get your vanilla flavors and your sugars. But if you just put it in a raw barrel, it's going to taste bitter. That's why even wine, they toast it. So now, like, same thing I'm sure they have in Texas, they have a little bit more humidity. But for us here, the good thing, what we see is typically our proofs are going up. If we don't do a temperature control at all, we see the proofs go up because water evaporates in a drier climate versus alcohol. Alcohol evaporates more in a humid climate. So in Kentucky, they typically lose alcohol before they lose water. Here we lose water before we lose alcohol.
Right.
So
you mentioned 5.5 years, and that had a little bit to play with you. I know your family came over in 1917, but you want to tell people how you came up with 1917 since we're kind of talking about it?
So 1917 was the year that my grandfather came over. We started farming here, but it's also, that's kind of our sweet spot of the actual original Merced Rye. So that's, 5.25 years, 1917 days. That's when I started to notice, like, we need to release a barrel proof. And that was how many days it was in the barrel. So we kind of like left that as our standard. So once we got to that point, we're like, man, this is just this 123, it's 120, 123 is just kind of perfect. And that's, the 123 is kind of about what it is at 100 and at about 5 years. So it's crazy to see what the losses can be, a year to 2 years later in evaporation.
So another question here is, do you have a plan to make a non-sour mash bourbon?
Actually, it's already in the works. It's in barrel.
Oh, all right. Right on.
We just did it a couple years ago, so it's still going to be a little ways away. But yeah, we decided to. Sour mash is a pain in the butt. So
well, you know what? I normally don't even like sour mash, but I like this one.
Yeah.
Go figure, right?
Yeah, and it was and I like it too, but it definitely was a challenge, and so we definitely will. That's going to always probably be some kind of small batch thing that we do because I didn't understand the challenges with it. I just wanted to be different. I didn't want to make I'm not a sweet bourbon drinker. So somebody kind of turned me on, and Jack Daniel's, number 7's a sour mash, but I'm not a fan. I love Jack Daniel's. And
I almost had a question on that in there.
Yeah. I mean, they make number 7 stuff, but number 7's just not my thing. And I've always,
it's the best selling whiskey in the world. I think
it's number 1 selling whiskey in the world. And
every time I smell it, I'm like, you know what? And I like some Jack Daniel's. I'm not a huge Jack fan. I love Sinatra Select, and there's a couple, the Coy Hill. I love that.
Yeah.
But other than that, that Lincoln County process, it must be that. I'm just not a fan of it.
Yeah, I don't. And I just think it's. I'm not sure what it is, but it's not.
But people like it. I try to appreciate and why people may like other ones. Everyone doesn't have my palate. So
yeah. Well, and it's a good whiskey for what it is. Like, for a mass-produced number 1 selling whiskey in the world, it's not a bad whiskey, but it's definitely just not what some of these other brands have. And even compared to their own stuff, like, I have some really rare. Their rye is good. I have gold label bottle that they told me when I was there. I've done that tour 8 times, and they told me, oh, this is never going to be released to the public, only at the distillery. And of course, like I got home, and then a year later I see it out in the store. So like,
right.
But
So we got a description on what someone in the chat, Raven Wing Saint, thinks what Old Number 7 tastes like. Spoiled banana pudding.
Yeah.
This
that's a good comparison.
He's a good friend of mine. I do a weekly live podcast on Twitch with him, and we've here's another one, moldy corn. There's if you don't mind, I'm going to start mixing their questions in here too. There's a lot of questions. I can go to mine and go to theirs. They got some great questions that I didn't come up with. So I was trying to kind of play off of Joe's interview, kind of build on that. Yeah. Since I was
ask away to it. Anything you want to ask.
So okay, here's one. You are coming out. You do have small batch. What do you consider at Corbin Cash a small batch? Since there's really no industry standard for a small batch.
Yeah, I've talked to. I mean, everything we do is small batch.
Right. But
so I've talked to other distillers, and everybody's kind of like on this page of like anything less than 250 barrels is a small batch, and I'm like, well, that's
everything's small batch. Great, awesome.
Everything's small batch, right? So I mean, we make a batch for us is, and I guess it's all broke down to what do you consider a batch. So one batch for us only produces 3 barrels. So like one fermenter, you saw our fermenters. Those fermenters each, that's a batch that produces 3 barrels. Okay. But if we could also say, well, we took this lot of rye from this field and we made X amount of barrels. So, it's kind of what's your definition of batch, right?
Right. Okay.
For us, it's 3 barrels in one fermenter. That's all we do at one time. We do we can do up to 6 a week. 9 a week or 10 a week if we're really cranking and working 18, 20-hour days. But ultimately, it's that's how small we are. So we hope to change that soon with a new distillery, but because I would love to be able to make more because it definitely gets more cost effective. But you don't. And so my biggest concern has always been when you scale, how do you keep things the same? Because even just moving from one still that we have to another, there's been little nuances. The great thing for whiskey is, a lot of it has to do with, the proof you distill it at, what you barrel it at, and how you do your barrels. So so I don't foresee any trouble, hopefully, in the future, like with us going with a bigger still or, getting production up. Because again, as long as you're using the original products, it's it should stay pretty consistent.
So one of the questions was, I think from Dragland is his name. Do you have plans for a barrel proof? I know this is actually a barrel proof, right? The sour mash.
They're all barrel proof.
Okay, so they're all barrel proof.
Everything but the original is a barrel.
But this guy, okay.
So the sour mash is a barrel proof at 106 because we aged the bourbon at a lower proof. So I did that on purpose. So we started. So all our rye is barreled at 120, but the bourbon we barreled at 110.
Okay.
So we did a 110 barreling on that. But everything else, all the rye is barreled at, and even our sweet potato liqueur that we barrel age, that is all barrel aged at 120.
So without all the hoopla, other than this, you're going to get a barrel proof small batch product.
Yeah.
In all these bottles.
Yeah.
And they're delicious.
Yeah.
Okay. Raven says, oh, how much is a barrel? And would you do a pick from a content creator?
So a barrel, it just depends on which barrel you pick. We charge by the bottle, and
okay.
So it comes out to however many bottles or cases are in that barrel. We've had some come out. I mean, we've had as little as 19 gallons come out of a 53-gallon barrel. So that's the kind of. So our average on the 6 years that we've been doing, the average has been probably closer to like 25 gallons. So almost half of it gets evaporated out.
Ooh.
So you can understand the expense on that.
Okay, so another one from Australia here. Do you air dry your barrels before charring?
So one of the things that our cooperages do is they season the wood. We call it seasoning.
Okay.
3 years. So that, and I know in your question, it was about, so it's our cooperage is actually here in California.
Okay. Okay.
But the oak does come from Kentucky.
Okay.
So there's two different types of oak that we used, and when we started, and we got barrels from Kentucky, and we had barrels from our local, actually 3 barrels. Barrels from Kentucky, barrels from Missouri, and barrels from Fresno, California, which is where our local cooperage is. What we found out as we were trying these all out was that the Fresno barrels were just, everything seemed to be going better. The flavor profile, not that the other ones were bad, they just weren't the same. And the level, and honestly, originally what we thought was the way they were made was better. They didn't leak like the barrels did. So we started doing our research on that, and I just came up with bad craftsmanship on the leakage side of it. But as far as the taste, it was the fact that they season the wood for 3 years. So they cut the lumber, it sits out, it weathers for 3 years, so all the sap is dried, and that's part of the difference. When you get these young barrels, they're only seasoned 18 months, 2 years. That's what some of our other barrels, there's still a chance there could be some sap in there, and that's going to be in your whiskey, you know?
Yeah.
So that was one particular thing that we figured out really early. And then another one was when we talked about the Leaky Barrel. So I had all these barrels I bought from Missouri, and great company. I just thought they didn't know how to make barrels very good, and we have leaks in them. And so one day I'm doing a farm tour, and with a farm tour, you get to go into the barrel room and see the barrel room and do a tasting out of a barrel. And so I'm giving this tour, and I'm talking about the barrels and how I'm like, yeah, these just aren't as good. So we quit buying them. They leak, and the craftsmanship just isn't there. And the gentleman goes, "Oh, excuse me, that's not craftsmanship." He goes, "That's a different American white oak." And I'm like,
oh, okay.
Huh? Well, he was a plant pathologist.
Oh, okay.
And he goes, "I've actually studied this." And he goes, "Actually, the white oak in Missouri is a more porous white oak than what is grown down in Kentucky. And it's just the way it grows. The species are slightly different. Incredible. And the way it grows, it's not as dense." And so, and it's funny, as the more reading I was doing, I said, why can't you use other types of wood for barrels? Because of the pores. So American white oak actually is a porousy wood, but there's a for lack of a better term, kind of a sap or a cream per se, that when you cut it, it actually fills the holes up and allows it to hold in liquid. And it's it's one of the only woods besides like French oak, and you got European oak. Those specific oaks. That's why they don't leak very much. So
I did not know that. That's good.
I didn't either. And then
now you know.
Yeah, now I know. And
so way more than you thought you'd ever know about it, right?
But it's an important component, right? To know that kind of stuff. So.
Oh yeah. So just while we're talking about the barrels and all that stuff, I don't know if you can see my wood, my tabletop.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know if you've ever watched any of my videos. Yeah. So I got a hole here. Had to flip it. Went all the way through. Here's my gauge. When my this hole gets deep enough, and I start racking my knuckles on into the table, and they start bleeding, it's time to flip it. That's my gauge. It's old school gauge, right? You start bleeding, it's time to turn. I did that. So now I'm starting on this side. So I can't remember how many times people have asked me, you should put this in some whiskey. And I'm like, no, you don't want that in there. It's probably got some pesticide or something. So this is 12 2x6s pressed together. You don't want that. It was packing material. But my question to you is, if you have anything that's broken that I could chop up, people want to buy this stuff and put it in drinks.
Yeah. Well, you need to build you a tabletop out of old barrels.
There you go, just without stuff sliding off.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I need. I need a white oak tabletop. I said it's gonna be hard to chip it up though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not gonna be as forgiving as this.
Exactly.
Whew. All right, so we got some more. Oh, the 700 milliliter bottles. Any plans on changing your bottle sizes, or because these are 750s? Okay.
No,
we're keeping it American, people.
Yeah, it's I mean, no, we like the 750. It's the 700. You know what's funny is there's some really cool bottles that weren't available in 750s when we were looking. So because they're just kind of available in Europe, and then they made the switch. But we're pretty happy with our packaging. So
I'm saying this incredible, man. This is I'm telling you, this and Smoke Wagon, my favorite packaging for the same reason, and they look completely different.
Yeah,
which is incredible. Right,
I just recently saw Smoke Wagon about 6 months ago, and that bottle is cool.
It is cool. It's like got a nice little grip. I mean, this has a nice grip.
Yeah,
too, but it's got those little flowery things on it. Just bleeds these two bottles just bleed old West. Corbin Cash, Smoke Wagon. The names both bleed it. The bottles bleed it, and you combine them all up. Awesome packaging. I like it better than Blanton's, people. I said it. Okay, I said it. Okay, so give me a couple more here. Okay, I think we've kind of covered most of my stuff, and just in conversation, which I think is great.
Yeah.
Who's got some more questions in the chat here? So today, let me see here. Oh yeah, here we go. Oak and Eden uses. Yeah, they might actually. So they might have come in during the night and stolen some of my wood shavings. You probably pretty close there, Sean. Oh, so okay. So do you have a 350 in the 1917? Do you have a 350 in it? I know you. I haven't seen it in anything else.
No, the 375s we only have in the 1917 and the bourbon. So
okay,
we haven't released them in the single barrels. You know what's funny is we did that because I was like, it's a more expensive whiskey, so we're gonna have a 375, and nobody ever buys them. They always go for the 750.
Yeah. Well, so obviously I have one. Yeah. But anyone that watches any of my stuff, and I'm sure I made a video of it in here because it was my favorite rye, and I had to have a hiding spot for it. But it was the perfect size to fit in there. That ones wouldn't fit. So
if we have we haven't made the single barrels in 375s. We haven't had that request, but the 1917 we do. But even when we go out and sell them to stores, everybody's like, "Nah, man, just give me the big one."
Yeah, and that's honestly how I ended up with this. Is I had a pour of it there at your distillery, and I wanted to buy a bottle of it. And, we're all out of them. All we have is the small ones. Like, well, give me two. Give me two of those.
Yeah,
that's how I ended up with this, and now I got a story behind it, and it was able to fit in here. So
that's cool.
I'm all good with it now. Since then, I've killed the bottle, and I've got another bottle, and I've got a 6-year single barrel, an 8-year single barrel, and the sour mash, and they might have. I just don't have the rest of them. But you do have a bourbon, almost a bur rye. Would you call it a bourbon rye? Is it a high rye bourbon or high bourbon, high corn rye?
So it's we have. You mean it's in the barrel right now?
No, it's in a bottle like this. It's
Oh,
the rest of the
no,
lineup.
that's actually a blended whiskey.
Oh, it's a whiskey. That's right. It's a blended whiskey.
It's a blended whiskey, and that's actually a sweet. It's blended with sweet potato, barrel-aged sweet potato alcohol and rye. So
I haven't had that. Now, I was reading
So-
about it. I'm disappointed that I haven't had it yet because it
So,
sounds like it'd be right up my alley.
So we started, I was like, well, I want to make a sweet potato whiskey. So we started barrel aging this stuff, and we have like right now we have some 8 and 9-year-old sweet potato stuff, and we could. So when I went to release it, the government's like, well, you can't call it whiskey, and I'm like, why not? It's barrel aged, and they're like, because it doesn't have any grain in it. So then I'm like, damn, what are we gonna do? I have all these barrels.
Yeah, you blend it.
Then we released a barrel-aged sweet potato liqueur, which was, it's barrel-aged minimum of 4 years. Well, now 5, but and then we found this loophole in blended whiskey where we could do a blend of our rye and the sweet potato. So we did that, and it's a good seller at the distillery. It's hard to wrap people's minds around it, I think, because they hear, oh, it's got sweet potato in it, that's weird. But then,
oh my gosh,
once they try it, they're like, because originally what bartenders in the Bay Area thought we were putting the vodka in there, and I'm like, no, you got to come out and check it out. We barely, we have all the records. So we sell it at the distillery, and there's stores and stuff that have it, but it's not heavily distributed. But it's funny when we get people in, it's usually they're just not rye drinkers and they end up taking the blended whiskey. But anytime a rye person comes in now, or they're like, man, I don't like rye, but I love this one. And then we'll try them on the 1917. Because if they're not a fan of the original rye, then I'm like, you ain't going to like the 1917 because it's stronger.
Yeah.
But they end up leaving with the 1917. They're like,
it's the bottle, man. It's the bottle. They got to say, look at that. It just looks cool. I got to have it.
Yeah. So, we do. We do have the 375s in the bourbon and the rye if people want to try them. The single barrels, because they're picks by the stores or the bar, then we don't have them unless they were to request it. But nobody has requested them yet. So.
Okay, let me see. Look, okay, here we go. I got a question from Dragland here. Looking on your website, I see you ship to California because you're in California. So would someone in NC, that North Carolina, how would someone in North Carolina go about purchasing a bottle of your cask strength Merced Rye?
You'd probably call the distillery. So North Carolina is a control state. And
explain that. They may not know the control, non-control.
Yeah, so a control state means that the state of North Carolina, Oregon, Utah, it's the government controls the liquor. So there's 2 ways, which we've just had fun. It's a good question because we just had the state of Iowa call us and said, hey, we had a special request for your blended whiskey. Is it available to us in Iowa? And I said, well, if you guys want to buy it, you can. Oh, yeah, we want to go ahead and get that paperwork filled out so we can bring it in. So if you have a good liquor store that you frequent in North Carolina, they can make a special request to bring it in. And so funny is North Carolina is one of the states we want to get into because of our whole farming operation, and I feel like it fits kind of that area. But if you can't get a liquor store to bring it in, then, you can call somebody out here and they can ship it to you.
So
we can find somebody to ship it to you.
So I have it scrolling across the bottom now. David Souza is his name. So I got scrolling across the bottom now. I'm trying to switch the scrolls up and give them your website and all this stuff, and I'm trying to get your name up there. And
it's funny because we actually can't even ship in California right now because when COVID ended, they took away our right to ship even in state. I'm part of the DTC committee, the direct to consumer committee, and we are currently fighting that to get it back.
I was going to ask you that too.
Yeah, so it's in process still. They're supposed to be meeting this in the next week or so, in this month. So fingers crossed we'll get it back. We will eventually get it back. It's just a matter of when, but hopefully it's like this month would be nice, or by the end of the year. is what we're hoping for.
Oh, good.
So, and if it passes, that actually could open us up to ship nationwide. So
okay.
It's a good thing. ABC is actually being proactive with it. Even it's funny. Even our distributors are now being a little more proactive because
word's getting out.
Yeah, well, we put limits on it, and with but now the big guys, the Beams and the Daniels and the Brown Formans of the world are like, no, if we can't get it, nobody can have it. And so it's like, but you guys don't need it. Your stuff's everywhere. You don't need it.
What do you need to grow more?
Yeah, and wineries do it all the time. What's the difference? So hopefully it's going to come back sooner than later. To answer that question, but
so I think there's probably a couple of people on here that would like to ask you questions themselves. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
I'll bring them on screen. Hey, Sean, you want to come ask a question? Dragline, you guys want to come ask a question? Pop, I just put the link in there. Pop on in, and we'll let you speak to the man. But yeah, like I said, I'm sure your father and grandfather, along with my grandfather, and he's probably the hardest manual labor working person I know. Yeah. I have a great. My dad's a really hard worker too, and my father-in-law. But 3 different realms.
Yeah,
but, the farm doesn't sleep. A dairy doesn't sleep for sure. There's animals that the farm does not sleep, and it takes it out of you. Right? Yeah. It's 24/7, and if no one knows how to do what you gotta do, you're not going on vacation.
No.
That's your life.
Especially my grandfather had a dairy too, and I was glad he got rid of it because dairies, I mean, farming 7 days a week, but it ain't 24 hours a day. And a dairy's just like, it's pretty much 24 hours a day.
It's like having 500 pets.
Yeah.
They have to eat, and you got to clean up what they eat when it comes out later.
Yeah.
Those are memories.
Yeah. So I see one question. What are the prospects of getting into Kentucky?
Yes.
I think right now it's like our focus has been mainly our home state. I would love to be in Kentucky. It's so far away. We have to really fully be able to represent ourselves takes a lot of money to move states. And California is just this huge animal. But the one thing that I've learned is California is the most sought after state in the liquor business. Biggest consumption. And I feel like if we can own our state, once we can own our state, we can really make it anywhere. It's just we got to, and it's the hardest state to do business in. So if we can get it figured out here, it's our home.
Yeah.
State. And if we can build the fan base here, I really think we can take it and grow it almost anywhere.
And you're building a humongous fan base. I mean, I'm blasting you out, but I got people in other states within TikTok and Instagram that can't wait to get some of the Ryes, especially, so that, hey, can you get so I've personally sent stuff out so people can try it, and they're like, oh my God.
We saw a review the other day from somebody that you sent a bottle to, and somebody sent me the link, and I was laughing. The guy's like, man, it's Bad Axe Bourbon always talking about this rye, and I got to try it. And he's like, at first he's smelling it, and he's like, yeah, it smells really light. He's not, but then when he tasted it, he was like, oh my God. Like, he loved it. But it's funny how it's a different experience for everybody.
It is.
And it's, and it just, everybody has their own experience with it. And that's kind of it's a cool thing,
And that guy, Charles, his name's Charles.
Charles, yeah.
He's actually in California.
He is?
Yeah, he went to, I don't know if he went to El Cerrito, but I think he went to El Cerrito and got that bottle.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I think that's what he did mention that.
I think he did. I don't remember quick, but I'm pretty sure that's where he got it. Greenhouse whiskey. I don't know what I don't know what that's the
greenhouse is we call it greenhouse blend. That's just a term I coined because that's what we do in the greenhouse. We do plant breeding, so it's kind of crossbreeding the rye and the sweet potato. So we call it greenhouse blended whiskey. So that's the one. Well, I should have a bottle here somewhere.
Hey, completely. Is that Oat Rage? Oh yeah,
Oat Rage. Yeah, I have a bottle of Oat
Corsair Oat Rage is good.
So this is our blended whiskey. So
that's a cool bottle too. I mean, it's the same bottle, but the label is pretty cool as well.
Yeah, and that's the combo of the sweet potato rye, and it's a true whiskey. Like it's barrel aged. It's even the sweet potato is distilled at 135, 140 proof, just like our whiskeys, just like the rye. Barrel aged, same barrels, same amount of time. The only difference is it doesn't, it's not a grain. And it's got this interesting, it's closer probably to a bourbon than it is a rye, just because the sweet potato really mimics more like a corn on the consistency side.
Oh, okay.
But it's almost more like, it's funny, it's almost more like a sour mash without having to do the whole sour mash, moving the old mash over. It's
the whole process, right?
Yeah, it's a different, lighter process. So
all right, we got Sean from Whiskey Wars waiting in the background. Ready to go, Sean? Looks like it.
Yeah, little bit different view this week.
You had some issues this week, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. First off, David, good to meet you, man.
Good to meet you.
Really enjoying the stream, and thank you, Bobby, for having me on. Appreciate that as well. Mobile only this week. I live in the rurals, and internet's down, so computers.
You're in Kentucky, right, Sean?
Yeah. I live in a small town, Kentucky. Yeah, so.
So hey, I got off track. We should cheers. This should have been the first thing I did, David. I apologize. So we got three of us on here.
Cheers.
Cheers,
fellas.
Delicious. That was
not quite rye. Corbin cash. We'll settle for what we got.
Right on.
All right. So, David, if you don't mind, I got some maybe more scientific questions, and maybe I missed this early in the stream. So I don't know if you feel like sharing this, but I'm always interested in like the distillery process. So what are like the kind of temps you guys are running on like your mashes and things like that? So
we ferment at like 30C. We're trying to keep it at 30C. We go up to 31, 32. It's sometimes in this heat, it's hard. Like we have a little, our yeast can go up to 35, but it starts sinking fast. So, wintertime is great. Everything kind of stays on point, but we're always trying to shoot for that 30 to 30. No, really not over 32. We don't want to stress the yeast out, and it's hard out there. Yeah.
So 32 is that's kind of your breaking point where you start to see the yeast starting to overwork and.
Well, that's my safe go. I would say 35 is where they really start to overwork. 34, 33 will, I know we're safe at 32, but 33 is where you start to see a little bit, you can get a little bit tricky, and you'll start. If it's, and we've had this happen, is we'll taste the whiskey coming off and it's crazy. But if it's been at 35 and say we couldn't keep it cool, it was just too hot or whatever, you'll taste the difference coming out the still. It's, and that's the difference with a pot or a hybrid still or a pot still. You're tasting every batch coming out. When you're running a continuous still, you may not catch that, because it's it's kind of going through. But for the most part, that was kind of part of my learning process, why I'm happy we started on a really small still, so we could learn those nuances before we got into something bigger that could produce a lot more. Because once you screw it up, it's worthless. You
can't redo your mash once.
You can't redo the mash. You can put it in a barrel and hope for the best, but you will get some that taste different. And if you end up with one one batch for us is, like I said, 3 barrels. But we used to, like when we first started, we just did 4-barrel bottling. So if you had 3 barrels screwed up, you don't have any way to hide that.
So kind of SOL, right?
Yeah.
How much of it is luck?
Yeah. If you're blended 1,000 barrels and you got 3 bad ones, it's pretty certain you're not going to taste it. But when you're doing everything as small as we are, you have to be precise.
I mean, you're doing it right so far. I mean, is there any luck involved with you just have the sweet potatoes and the Merced Rye happen to be a good combo and the climate where we are? I mean, something.
I think luck always has a lot to do with a lot of things because, I'm no science. Like, I wasn't educated on distilling. Like, I just taught myself. Like, I bought a book and I looked at recipes, brewing recipes, and I kind of just was like, I'm no scientist. I don't claim to be. I've learned I did like chemistry in school, but I didn't take anything in college. So I didn't know I was going to be doing this. So a lot of it is luck in a sense of trial and error, but I'm hard-headed and I don't give up. So it's just like, it was a lot of trial and error. Like, it was 2 years to develop the recipes. So it was a lot of trial and error.
You have to have so much patience. So many people, I would say not everybody, this isn't a staple, blanket statement, but I would think that drive isn't there for this kind of stuff in the new generation. Probably it's people that have the great grandparents that are hard workers in the field, just don't know how to give up instead of, I'm just going to do something else.
Yeah. And I think that's part of your upbringing.
Have to be taught it.
Yeah. You can't,
you have to have good examples.
You have to have good examples, but everybody is inherently born with their personality. And some people are, and if we were all entrepreneurs and go-getters, then the world would be a different place, right? Just like we can't all be doctors. But I think when it comes to, like, I'm stubborn. Like, I'm hard-headed. I have plenty of people tell me you can't make vodka from sweet potatoes, like, or you can't get enough vodka from sweet potatoes, or you can't make whiskey with Merced Rye. And I'm like, well, why not? It just won't work. And I'm like, well, okay, I don't believe you. Let me try.
No, you can't. I can. You can't.
Well, and in some instances, they weren't wrong. It is different. Like I said, it's not a big producer. It's not a big producer of starch, so our costs are generally higher. Our evaporation is a little different here, but in the end, if you make a good product, people will buy it, and that's what you have to break it down to. And it is California's an expensive place to do business, so unfortunately, all of those costs go into it. But I feel like it's like I'm the person that I'm a quality over quantity. And just like we have Italian made glass, people are like, why didn't you go to China? Because my mom's Italian and I like quality, and it's part of my heritage, and that's where we went. And honestly, at this point, the glass isn't that much more than China. And my quality is always on point. It's the issue is because it's custom glass, you have to order so much of it. It's like 30,000 bottles. I can't just order a pallet of this stuff. I got to order a container load. So
also, my wife's Italian, so cheers to that. Yeah,
cheers to that. Yeah. So I got stubborn on both sides, Portuguese and Italian.
Hey, so do you have any mentors you're working with?
It was funny. I got a little bit closer to Dave Pickerel before he passed away. I'd met him a couple times, and then and I was like, man, you got to come. He's like, I want to come out to the distillery. You got a good product. And I didn't know he did at the first time I met him, he was still at Jim Beam, and then he went over to Whistle Pig, and then he had all these other projects going, and I'm like, I thought they were his own personal projects. Like, no, I do, consulting, and I help brands get off the ground. And he's like, you really have a good product. You need to stick with it. So, like, I was, unfortunately, the night before he died, we were up in San Francisco, and before Whiskey Fest, and he spoke at a club that I belong to, at Wingtip, and we were there, and I'm like, man, when are you gonna come down? It's like next time you're here, and he's like, yeah. And I could tell he didn't look like he felt very good. And then the next day we heard he passed away. But I got 2 bottles of Hill Rock signed by him that night.
Right on.
Yeah, they're never. I don't open them because they're now they're going to be my collectors. But so I have 2 bottles of Hill Rock that I've never tried, other than at that night at the tasting that he was there for that bottle signing for Whiskey Fest. But he was kind of my mentor. But no, I don't have anybody else that I really have worked with. I didn't really know anybody in the business.
So, Bobby, maybe you asked this earlier in the stream. I know I came in a few minutes late. David, what got you into Merced Rye? Was this the kind of the family farm thing, or what? How did you end up with Merced Rye?
Yeah, so essentially that's what I had on hand. So my goal initially, like I kind of said in the beginning, I didn't become a connoisseur of liquor until I was more in this business. Like I had a gentleman kind of teach me how to drink good booze and introduce me to good vodkas and good whiskeys. So that's kind of got my mind turning like, oh, this is, what can we do here? And so I wanted to start with what we had on the farm, because for us, the only thing we did with Merced Rye was harvest it and plant it next year. So for 90 years, the only thing we ever did with it was harvest it and plant it, harvest it and plant it. It was just completely a cover crop. They don't make bread with it. They don't do anything with it because of the starch content being so low. I think it's not a big producer, but it worked really well in our valley because it's drought tolerant. So we've looked into some other varieties that we're looking at as far as maybe some better producers that are also drought tolerant that might work, because we don't typically irrigate this rye. It's whatever rain we get, that's what we get. So I wanted to be, I was looking to be more sustainable for this particular, for this.
Yeah, your climate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is a nice comment, David. Hanging AZ says, wake up in the morning and decide to make whiskey. David is the man.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a good comment.
So what is the typical use for Merced Rye then, for us laymen that
it's just a cover crop for sweet potatoes. So it's just a winter rye crop that my grandfather, we don't even know where Merced Rye really came from. We just know that he started planting it back in 1917. And you can imagine, if you've never been to California, so where we live was a desert. So it was essentially classified as a desert. And then when they started building dams and making lakes, they became irrigation systems. And so that's what the valley started to flourish and plant crops. So, but we still were like a dust bowl out here. We would get these heavy winds in the winter, would blow the sand. We're in like our sandy soil here. It's pretty unique. It's almost like beach sand without the salt. It's super like loose and airy. And so when the wind blows, it looks like the Sahara Desert out here. It just goes across. Yeah. So they used to plant the rye to just circumvent that. And then also in the winter, it would rain. And if we didn't have rye, tons of weeds would grow. So it actually chokes out the weeds. And then dust control. That's really all it was ever used for. Then we would harvest it and then plant it the next year. So, it was, for 90 years, it was just a cover crop.
Hey, I got a question, David. Do you plan on finishing any of your products in different barrels? I mean, it seems to be like people are finishing things in, the Japanese oak barrels, Mizunara, whatever those are.
We've talked about getting some we've thought about getting some I'm always kind of a big heritage guy and I like old world things, but I thought about getting some Portuguese port, finish them in some Portuguese port barrels or some.
That would be awesome.
Old Italian wine barrels. So we've thought about it. I know a lot of people are doing the bourbons, and what kind of got me onto it was I had a bottle of, damn it, whose was it? It's a dark rye. It's
Got Peerless?
No, let me see.
Please don't be Basil Hayden.
I don't know. It wasn't Basil Hayden. They have a dark rye too.
Yeah,
Basil Hayden.
Not really.
It was a different one than Basil Hayden. I don't have it here. It was a friend of mine brought it over. That's what it was.
Yeah, we don't talk about the dark rye from Basil Hayden.
not very well anyway. Or often.
I actually haven't had that, so it's
don't.
Don't.
You got the best product right now.
Yeah.
So I saw it, and then my buddy's like, "Oh, I got this one that's it's a dark rye, but and I don't remember the brand, but it was pretty good. But it had this you could almost taste the wine in it, so it was a little bit different. I don't know. So I've thought about it, but we haven't toyed with it at all yet.
All right. Well, that's not a no.
No, it's not a no. So we're actually making. I thought about trying some rum casks. So we're actually making rum right now, and tequila. So we've got them both aging. So maybe when we finish out the rum, we'll age some rye in it.
Yeah, David, that's one thing I was going to say. Some of my favorite finished ryes are finished in rum barrels. I think that's a good pairing, the sweet from the rum with the spiciness of the rye. That I think that works really well.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And because it's like everybody's, I feel like so many people are coming out with just trying to be different and and reinvent the wheel and be the next cool thing. I don't want to be a fad. That was just my big thing is I don't Fireball hit it, but and Fireball will be around a long time, but it's just kind of one of those one hit wonders. It's there. It is what it is. I want to build a rapport, and I want to just continue making something good.
Yeah, Fireball and what's the peanut butter whiskey, Screwball. Those are college campus things. Military dorm things. They're going to live forever because they're super sweet and they'll shoot them.
Yeah. And back in the day, it was Jaeger bombs.
Jaeger. I was trying to think of Jaeger. I was trying to think. So. Yeah, and again, like Dave was saying, it's a fad thing. I'm hoping that Fireball will fade away someday. That'd be great. Anybody can melt some Red Hots and put it in some water.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, man. It's been around like before it was Fireball, it was Captain McGill.
Yeah.
It's like people don't know that shit. I'm like, dude, that's been around. I mean, it's even like Bullet, right? Bullet's been around since 1986. A lot of people don't know that, but it took them so long. Seagram's bought it and Seagram's went broke.
Yeah.
Diageo ended up with it. And it just goes to show you how tough it is to build a brand. Like it's a variety. I mean, in today's world, we have the internet, which is helpful to one extent, but you've got a million other brands popping up that everybody can know about and everybody's updated with information. So it's definitely no easy feat. And so we approve. That's why we appreciate all of you guys that really, you don't blow smoke up people's butt. You like it. If you don't, you don't. But it's all of this word of mouth stuff is so helpful because, you like you were saying earlier, Bobby, you can see a beautiful package on there, but people are scared to buy it because it's usually something hidden behind that package. That doesn't mean that it's always going to taste good. So.
Right.
I mean, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sean. Go ahead, man.
I mean, as a whiskey buyer, I mean, me and Bobby and all us whiskey tubers are in the same boat. We're always looking for something new because, that's what we do for a living is we review whiskey. And so the problem is especially when a bottle is not forthcoming about where it's come from, then you could just end up with another 4-year-old MGP. And that's fine, but it's nothing different. And so, and especially if you're a novice consumer and you don't even know what you're looking for, then you might hit that 4-year MGP, source bottle 5 times in a row. You don't know. Yeah, and so that's why I made the comment earlier that I really appreciate, even though guys are going it the hard way, at least we're getting a different profile, a different product that has never been on the market before. I know it's costly to do it that way, but I appreciate when a distillery does that because that's a whole new thing that didn't exist before. Because MGP is everywhere. So I mean, and there's nothing against MGP. I think they put out a great product. It's just that we have enough of it. So.
Yeah, well, it's it comes into, that's where branding comes in, right? And it's like people fall in love with brands, and I think that's where alcohol is.
Lens.
Cars, right? It's like people fall in love with a brand, not necessarily products, but at the same time, like to what you said, it's like, well, why should I buy Templeton Rye at $40 if I can get Bullet Rye for $19? Because they're really the same thing, right? It's all from the same place. They're both 95% rye. At least, like Angel's Envy, they're like, yeah, we put it in rum barrels. They totally changed the profile of it. It's damn good. Like, it was one of my favorite ryes when it came out.
Same here.
I'm like, this is really good, but they're doing something different with it.
Exactly.
Smart guys.
For me.
Yeah. Well, and when that's the thing I think for me is like, in my mind, it's like, I want to grow a big brand. I want to be the next Jack Daniels for California or Jim Beam, whatever. And I want to do that, but I didn't have the financial side of it down because I didn't grow up in this business. So I had no clue that what these guys really do, like the whole, let's start with making it this way and then we'll switch it over later down the road. Or the guys at Angel's Envy did a smart thing. Like, they took rye, put it in rum barrels. They made a perfect product for Bacardi to buy from them, and flip it. It's like, you got a rum company. I'm taking rye whiskey from MGP. We're making a great combination product, and now I can take it to the big boys and sell it. So there's nothing wrong with that. But if the product speaks for itself, but they're also, transparent about that. Everybody knows. And what you're getting is different. So
a lot of my favorite products are MGP products, but it's everywhere. It's almost harder now to find something that hasn't come from MGP or Source. It's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, one of my favorites is Remus Repeal Reserve 5, but that's MGP's product that they're pushing for themselves. And it's got a cool bottle. It looks like an old school radio or something like that. It's a great product.
Yeah. I agree with Bobby. I think MGP is doing some great stuff. It's just the young stuff. It feels like it's saturated the market and it's everywhere. And all the startup brands that's where they're sourcing from. And so there's all these new brands popping up, but it's really all the same stuff. And so that's especially for the new.
What was frustrating about the whole craft spirits boom, and I'm like, it's like. It's like St. George. If you guys are familiar with St. George Spirit, Hangar One vodka. Yeah. I was like, so when I got into this, and if you want to talk about a mentor, somebody asked that earlier. Lance over there was extremely forthgiving with information and let me do a tour of their place and kind of gave me some information. So very helpful in the beginning of my whole process, because when I started, I was like doing all this hard work, and then it was like, everybody's like, why are you doing that? Like, everybody just buys their stuff and then puts it in a bottle. And I'm like, really? So then I started looking for somebody to make the product for me. And of course we're talking about the vodka here. And then everybody was like, sweet potato vodka? Like, no, we don't do that. Like, we sell grain vodka or potato vodka. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to do sweet potato. And so it's funny. I called this company in San Jose. I found a bottle of vodka at Costco and it said Franklin Distillers, and I'm like, oh, cool. There's a Franklin Distillers in San Jose. I had no idea there was a distillery in San Jose, so I called.
I didn't either. I worked near there.
Can I pay you guys to make sweet potato vodka for me? And he's like, we don't have a distillery. We're just a bottling plant. And I'm like,
there you go.
but we bottle Sky, we bottle this, we bottle that, so we can bottle for you. And I'm like, oh, okay, no, that's not what I want to do. Long story short, I talked to a guy in Idaho who made potato vodka, and he's like, I'm like, okay, so this is the route we're going to go. And he told me he would make me 3,000 gallons. And by the time we were done in our conversation over about a 6-month period, 3,000 gallons went to 12,000 gallons. And I'm like, this makes no sense. That's going to be a couple $1 million worth of proof, 190 proof vodka I'm sitting on. What to do with that? So I put my own distillery in.
Right on. Hey, right.
Which is the best thing I ever did. Because and honestly, I was still nervous about that because I'm like, well, what if I give this guy my recipe and then he's just starts copying it and selling sweet potato vodka all over the place? So then I started to really think about it and said, you know what? Because this business has taught me patience, because I was always go big, go home. And if it doesn't work, I don't have any patience. I'm done with it. And this business was probably, I fell in love with it, man. It started out as a project to do more sustainability in our business for our farm. And I just fell in love with whiskey, the people involved in it. And now I'm just a big connoisseur and I love it.
It's fun. I love the history of Prohibition and all that goes along with it too. It's just, everything is so interesting. Then you get into the science of it and different. I love the different mash bills, what it can do in certain areas. Same mash bill, different area, completely different thing. Even using the same barrel, different weather, it's going to be different. It's incredible. I love it. For sure.
Yeah. It's like you're talking with the comparison of Frey Ranch and us. It's like, at the same time, we're both making a bourbon, we're both making rye, but different grains, different areas, probably different barrel cooperages. All of those nuances make a difference.
Right.
So,
the biggest comparison I get is the farm to bottle aspect.
Yeah.
You're both that. And to be honest, my favorite rye was Frey Ranch Rye. It's 100 proof, bottled and bond. It's until I got this little guy right here. And then it moved to number 2, then it moved to 3, then it moved to 4. Now it's sitting at number 5. I don't know. So whatever you come out with,
be your rye whiskey, and you can give them your bourbon business.
Right.
That's what we hope for.
Right.
So David, I know earlier you mentioned that you're looking at other grains, especially other ryes potentially. Is there any? So do you have any other ryes in mind specifically, and also any other grains that you're looking at maybe going forward?
The ryes. So we just actually started sampling a couple of different varieties. Seraphinin is one of them. The other one I'm drawing a blank on. And the only reason I'm doing it is for sustainability of growth, because Merced Rye, if we were to say become a million, 2 million, well, we can do a million case brand. I would be happy with that. But if we were to get up higher than that, I would definitely want to see if there's something out there that we can match our profile that we can farm, because we're limited in farmland. And California, I'm just trying to think of the future. California is not getting farmer friendly. They're getting further away. So if we start losing with the droughts, if we start losing more and more land for agriculture, I'm going to need something that probably would produce better, or we're just going to have to be smaller, right? So it's really more forward thinking of like, say I do the same thing with our sweet potato vodka. So we're on potato number 3 from when I started. And so sweet potatoes, they eventually, each variety burns out. So every 20 years, 15 years, we're always having to switch a variety out. So I started doing that in the very beginning, is looking for that next variety so I can make sure that the flavor profile is consistent. And so that's kind of what I'm in the works of now, is just like, hey, if anything ever happens, I need to have a backup plan. And I want to have that now. I don't want to be like, oh, hell, here's Merced Rye. It's the best thing ever. It blows up and then we can't supply it. I mean, I guess that's a good problem, but I don't really,
right.
I want to circumvent that before it happens.
And then secondary question, I'll let Bobby take back over. If things got really detrimental there in California, any even kind of small plans of potentially moving to a state that is more agricultural friendly?
So we could, I guess.
Texas.
That's a big move. That would be
Arizona.
I guess the answer is we probably could. I think the good thing for us is we've owned our land, everything's paid for. We do have wells. Every property we own has a well on it.
That's great.
So, you know, if it's going to happen, it's going to probably be Corbin Cash's problem and not mine.
All right.
But
Sean, do you know where Corbin Cash came from? It's his son's name.
That's my son. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know.
So I would say essentially we're safe. We own, roughly 1,000. We farm 2,000 acres. We own about half of that. And ultimately, 1,000 acres of rye can make a lot of whiskey. So
Cool.
yeah, I don't foresee actually, and that was kind of another thing we were talking about today with my dad, was like thinking about varieties that may irrigate. So we don't irrigate our rye. And when we do, it doesn't produce any more. When in the last 100 years, we've had to actually sprinkle it twice just to get a crop because the drought was so bad.
Right.
But if we do irrigate it, we don't see too much of an increase in production.
Yeah, higher yield. Yeah,
no higher yield. And even with a higher yield, we don't always see a general jump in starch content. So the Merced Rye is a little bit smaller seed than a standard rye. And on the high side, we get about 57% starch. On a normal year, it could be 52 to 55, but I've seen it as low as 48. And a standard rye, like in the Midwest, they're looking at 65% starch, sometimes 70. So the starch content on that's a big player. I mean, 15% more product in the same process is a lot, right? It's a lot of it's a lot of revenue. It's a lot of product. So, and that's kind of where I'm thinking at some point is like, if someday Merced Rye, it may just become that real super specialty thing like Jack Daniels has, like a Sinatra. Merced Rye might be this small 100,000 case brand or 200,000, whatever it is. And then we're farming another rye to make a bigger, number 7 style.
That's thinking ahead.
That's how I'm looking at it. So Merced Rye is always going to be a thing for us, no doubt.
Right.
And like I said, I love it. It's my baby, and it's my passion project. So it's always going to be. But if I want to, I am thinking for the future, like, because I want to be that national brand, that world brand. So if we're going to do that, I got to make sure that's sustainable. And make sure that we have, the quantity that we need to do that. So,
so I got a quick question too.
It's a lot for a one-man show.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're founder and master distiller. What did it take to become a master distiller?
I never used to call myself that. And
hey, man, you got it. Use it. Run with it.
Well, it's official now.
It's official.
Well, and I was like, I'm a distiller, and because I didn't have any formal training. And when I talked to, it was, Dave Pickerel was one of them, but I was talking to a guy at the UC Davis brewing program, and I was talking to him. I'm like, because I sent one of my employees to go to school there to do the brewing program because she was a biochemist major at UC Merced.
Okay.
And so she graduated with a gold cord from UC Merced. And I said, look, eventually someday somebody's going to replace me. And she was a hard worker and super smart. So it's like, would you want to go to the brewery program at UC Davis and become a master brewer? And she's like, yeah. So I sent her. And so I was talking to the guy, and I'm like, he's like, so what do you consider yourself? And I'm like, well, the lead distiller, the head distiller. He's like, well, did you make the product? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you figured it all out on your own? And he's like, well, you're a master distiller. He goes, there's no formal thing to be a master distiller.
Right.
It's just,
Right.
if you're the guy who created it and did it, he goes, you don't have to have an education to do that.
Right. Oh, right on.
So
you've earned it for sure.
So now I don't mind calling myself that, but
hey, the proof is right here. I'll tell you that. I'll call you master distiller for sure.
Well, I appreciate it.
Right there.
I mean, and David, you're certainly in a very elite group. Elite. I mean, it's certainly in my mind. I'm sure in Bobby's as well, and really in all of Whiskey Tube and all us whiskey drinkers out there. I mean, we kind of worship master distillers. So, you know, I mean, honestly, I mean, you guys make the products we love. So, you know, there's a lot of hard work that goes into that, and we really appreciate that. So, thank you.
And that's the fun part for me. It's funny because I had one of my sales guys was working for me, and one of my business cards said CEO, and he goes, why do you have CEO? He says, you're the master distiller. Nobody wants to talk to the CEO.
No, right.
Exactly.
He goes, get rid of that fucking card and put master distiller back on your card. And I said, well, because I'm dealing with Southern, right? And I got to go to these distributor meetings. And so it's like, do they respect the distiller or do they respect the CEO? And he's like, nobody respects the CEO. You got to be the distiller. And I'm like, okay.
Well, I'll just say this, David. I have no idea who the CEO of Wild Turkey is, but I know who Jimmy Russell is.
Yeah.
So
it's like being in the military, right? You got this salty old master sergeant, but then you got this been in for 25 years, right? Then you got this butter bar lieutenant that just came in, who technically outranks him. He's his boss. Nobody respects that dude. Yeah. Everybody respects the old crusty sergeant that's been there, is grinding it out. He knows what he says. Yeah. Everybody believes him, and you'll walk off a ledge for him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, and it's and it's been a heck of a journey. And honestly, man, like these things is what makes it worthwhile to me. Like at the end of the day, I love making good products, but it's a people business. And I think that's part of I loved farming. But my dad and I were not far apart. So my parents had me pretty young, 16 years apart. So kind of even grew up with my parents. And I knew my dad wasn't going to let me be in control anytime soon. So I needed to find my path as well. And so, and I was always looking for something a little funner and a little more people orientated. And so I think I found it. And
I'd say.
So doing this kind of stuff is really, I mean, this makes my whole day.
Hey,
I wish I
could
do
it too, man. Hey, everybody, you know what everybody thinks? Bobby's gonna talk to a master distiller today.
That's it.
Hey, everybody! I got a picture with him. At the same time.
Well,
if
it wasn't for the fans, we wouldn't be here. So we appreciate it.
Right. Does anybody else use Merced Rye that you know of?
Right now, no. There's been a couple California distilleries that have tried it, and like I kind of think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, is they'll call me and be like, "Hey, man, I can't get this to produce much," and I'm like, and we have certain specific enzymes that I work with that I've figured out over the years to help with the rye and the sweet potatoes both. They're very specific enzymes that we use to break it down, and so. I tell them, I'm like, man, I would love to help you, but that's like Coke calling Pepsi and saying, hey, what's your secret?
Right.
And we only make two things. We make sweet potato alcohol and Merced Rye whiskey. So, well, now we have a bourbon, but I'm like, man, I'm not going to give you my secret. So as much as I want to be helpful, it would be like, and plus you're my neighbor. Like that's not good business.
Yeah.
It's not borrowing sugar.
Let's not give away all the secrets, right?
Yeah. It's like, man, it's there's because at the end of the day, that's the only difference in products is what you're using, right? It's the process is pretty much similar. I mean, there's little different nuances we do in our distilleries. Everybody has their differences, but again, cooking, fermentation, distillation, it's all a similar process. You know, how you bring it off, what proof you bring it off, those are your differences. You know, your mash temperatures and stuff. But at the end of the day, the biggest component to your whiskey or your vodka is what you made it from, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's the flavor profile, what you made it from and what you aged it in. So if they copy those two things, we're all right back to MGP.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, you know.
So hey, Hang AZ's got another little comment anyway. This is a green process to use the cover crop to make the rye in no waste. So it is essentially a no waste process.
Yeah, it's pretty much 100% sustainable. So the cool thing is too with our mash. So when we're done with both the sweet potato mash or the rye mash, we have a dairy down the street. We take it down, we feed it to the cattle. And if they don't have a use for it, there's actually enough potash left in the mash that we can actually put it back out in the field for fertilizer. So, so we pretty much 100% sustainable.
I love it.
So it's, you know, and it keeps our carbon footprint low. You know, we're always trying to do better by the environment. I know a lot of people in California think farmers are we're just gun yielding, fertilizer spraying, chemical spraying.
Don't be a dairyman. Don't be a dairyman. Have a cow.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, cows are killing the earth.
If you're a dairyman, you just officially worship Satan, right, Bobby? That's
yeah, for sure, right? Look at
Californian stance on that.
Oh my goodness, the cows! Oh my goodness, they're destroying the ozone.
Yeah,
come on, man. Come on.
All the farts, man. All the farts.
It is.
Anyway,
it's crazy. Anyway, right?
It's an interesting world to.
It is an interesting world.
How our outlook has changed since the 1980s in America.
Oh my goodness.
It's actually scary. I'm a little worried for our kids. Like it's kind of scary.
Yeah, man.
But I guess we'll have good whiskey to drink.
Yeah. Keep your mind off it, right?
Right. You know what? This has been a great hobby. It's really just through COVID and just being in California at all. David, thank you. You've taken all this, a lot of that stuff away from me. You just concentrated. I can concentrate on this nice hobby. Yeah. Go to work, fight some fires, come here.
Yeah.
Do this.
We
love it.
The firefighters too, man.
I
see a question from Peter White.
Yes.
Done anything with malted rye? So not up to this point, but we are. So I'm actually looking at doing a 51% rye of Merced Rye with some caramelized malted rye. And then
sounds sweet. Sounds good.
Yeah. So then we're actually, I just got a hold of some smoked applewood malt that fucking, dude, it's so this smoke. Yeah, I'm gonna. I'm just imagining this with the spice of the rye, and I'm thinking smoked apple pie, like so.
I mean, I use applewood on all my pork butts, so I'm with it, man. Yeah, I can't wait.
So a gentleman showed up the other day, and he's like, "Hey, do you use any malt?" And I'm like, "Well, we do some for the bourbon." He's like, "Well, I got this really good smoked applewood," and I'm like, and he goes, "I got some cherry wood too." So like the cherry wood was, yeah, man, this is really good. And I see a lot of cherry smoked whiskeys, but then this apple just like blew my mind. I'm like, dude, I'm already like, this is gonna be a thing. Like, so we're actually working on that because I just fell in love with it. So I'm like, okay, I got to do something with this. And when I love something, just like this bottle, when I'm going to do something with that someday. It took 10 years, but we did.
Right on.
And then I smelt this malted applewood, and I'm just like, dude, we got to do something with this. I think a combination with the rye, it's going to be phenomenal. So now I'm just working on, okay, is it going to be 20% malt, 10% malt? Like, because I've never worked with smoke before, so I don't want it to be too smoky like a Scotch where it's like tastes like an ashtray. But
well, I was going to ask you, do you like Scotch or Irish whiskey?
I do love Scotch, but I'm not a huge peat fan, so it's like too much peat is not my thing. But some Scotches I've been introduced to, I actually do like. But I do like smoke because I love mezcal. So I like a smoky whiskey. I'm just not too much of a peat fan. So
no, I'm not either.
Yeah, like Lefroy is like, I can't do it. Like it's just
yeah. See, I'm a proud member of the Cult of Ardbeg, but that's a whole. I mean, because peated Scotch is different than a smoky rye, especially the way that you guys are going. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to turn out.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping it'll be good. Like because I'm a big I became this huge mezcal fan, and I never really thought I would be a mezcal fan until, but there's some really good stuff out now. So, the original mezcals were shit. They were junk, but now there's some good stuff. And that got me turned on to smoke. And I'm like, and then this guy, like I said, this guy showed up selling grain, and I'm like, dude, I got to try that. Like that's on point. We're going to put that in some rye. So hopefully we'll be doing that pretty quick. Well, I just ordered it, so it should be here pretty soon.
So you're doing it.
So David, I have to ask, probably the most important question I'm going to ask tonight. How does a Kentuckian get your product?
Call me.
Yeah.
Okay. So David, I don't know if you can see it. I dropped my email in private.
Let me see if I can.
That's my work email for Whiskey Wars.
I got that. Okay. Yeah.
Sean's channel's Whiskey Wars. Great stuff. Great stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, because I love what Bobby's doing here. I'd love to have you on as well. But I mean, if I don't have any whiskey in front of me of yours to review with you, it doesn't really seem right. So I gotta get some stuff from you first.
Oh yeah. Let me give you my email as well. That way, I'm gonna copy this. But so it's D Souza.
Here, let me find a pen. I'm very professional.
And I have it as well, Sean. I have it. I can get it to you.
Oh yeah, Bobby has it.
I can get
Bobby
you.
Yeah, Bobby, if you could, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not finding a pen,
got it,
unfortunately.
and then let me know. We'll get you some bottles shipped. That way you can.
And he's got. I told him I'm just over 300 subscribers on YouTube. I have other.
Hey, Bobby, none of that stuff matters, man.
No, it does. Between you and I, it doesn't matter. But for him, for the purpose of him reaching more people, it will matter. So he's got over 1,000 subscribers, and other people with even more subscribers than both of us go into both of our live streams, and it'll just grow from there.
No, and it helps. It's funny because, like I said, you guys giving out your truth, because it's like you're not being paid to do this. I mean, even Fred Minnick, he did a little spurt about how he really had a lot of respect for us and Frey Ranch. He mentioned us in a podcast, and the phone started ringing. Hey,
cool.
How do we get a hold of your whiskey? Like,
it matters.
Fred Minnick said it's really good. And I met him. It's funny because I had no clue who he was. I met him at
the guy with the ascot.
The ascot guy.
Yeah.
And
that's how you know.
And well, this was like when we first launched the rye, and he comes up to me and he's like, super nice guy, but he's dressed all stuffy. And I'm like, with the ascot on, and I'm like, okay, this interesting character. And he's like, he knew his stuff, and I had no clue who he was. Gave me his card, and I'm like, okay. And then over the years, he's followed us, and then I got to know. I'm like, oh, this guy really knows his stuff, and so we just kept following. And he's been following us, and he's been a fan. And yeah, he's really, he's like, I like what you guys are doing. Like it's where whiskey needs to go, because he said like everything's kind of becoming the same from certain same places, and so And I think that's what I'm sure Freight Ranch, same thing. We just hope that we can make a dent in our states and get fans out there. And we want our products to be different because that's what's going to keep you wanting to buy this one and buy that one. Because if it's all tastes the same, there's no fun in that,
No.
I don't want my product to be, I want it to be a different nuance than what they're growing because that's what makes it unique. So, so I think that's what's cool about the craft spirits boom is I think it's starting that, but the more I dive into it and I meet a lot of the craft people, I'm also seeing like, oh, they're bringing in this stuff. They're not, so it's like
jumpstarting.
It's like Tito's calling himself handmade, like, right? Like it's a little frustrating. And it's like I tell people, I was like, look, Tito's, all the small guys hate him because he's full of shit, but and the big guys hate him because he's kicking their ass.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I tell the little guys, I go, at least he's still owned by himself. I go, he's showing that if you can beat the big guys at their own game, but you got to have enough money and you got to know what you're doing. And I've got a cousin-in-law that works for Diageo, and he's worked for Diageo for 40 years. He's a big wig up in corporate. He ran their international whiskey program in India. Like he was their guy in India for years. And he's always trying to get them to, you need to look at these guys. And I'm like, whatever. But he's like, oh man, we're sweating it. Tito's is kicking Smirnoff's ass in America. And I go, how is he beating you guys? He goes, he hired 3 Diageo marketing executives away from us. And now he's kicking our ass.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Well, because again,
beat them at their own game.
Well, a brand, what is Diageo? They're a marketing animal, right? They don't really create brands. They buy brands and they market them, right? That's what they do. And they'll tell you that. They're like, the brand, they created Ciroc and it was going to go in the toilet until they brought P. Diddy on because they couldn't sell it. So, but they're great marketing people and they bought some great products and they, and so, but when you get to a big standard like that, that's when it becomes a marketing game, right? You have to market yourself or people don't know about you. So, anyway, for us, I love doing this. And this is always always the fun stuff for us.
So Dragland's got another good question. Do you have plans for any longer age products in the future? Or do you feel like you've achieved the optimal flavor profile with what you got now?
I mean, my goal is to make something older. Like we have the 10-year, but the 10-year is a double barrel. So the thing with Here in the Heat is
I can't wait for that.
we've actually with the 8-year. It's a really low yield. So it's like the longer we go, the more expensive it's going to get. Yeah. Unless we start with the whole, like I started doing the whole temperature control thing to kind of let it relax. Because when you think about places like Canada, there's snow on the ground 6 months out of the year. Kentucky, you guys have a cool climate for a big season. We don't get that here. So our evaporation it's 12 months out of the year. So that's, we definitely would like to make longer age products. I just don't know if it's going to be feasible. So,
I mean, I would guess that our barrels aren't really doing much of anything from November to at least February, maybe longer than that, but at least that long.
Yeah. If you got snow on the ground and you're below 40 degrees, you ain't doing nothing,
No.
Yeah.
And so, and so that's, because I'll never forget when we started tasting this 6-year, and I'm like, why is this getting bitter? Like, and I don't think most people, like you guys probably would notice it. The average Joe wouldn't have noticed it, but I'm sitting here being anal about it. And I'm like, this is kind of bitter. I want to see why is this changing just in 6 to 8 months. And then I started thinking about that, and I'd compare it to Whistle Pig's 10, right? I'm sitting here, I'm like, why is this so different? How can they, there's no way they can age this 10 years, but then I'm thinking, hell, there's snow in Canada for, 6 months a year. It's not doing it. So it's, it's definitely in the woodwork, but longer is not always better. I've had 23-year-old happy, and I thought this is not good compared to their 13-year or their 11-year. Like the 23 is it's rough. Like I'm like, I would not pay $250 for a shot of this.
I mean, on that line specifically, it feels like 15 is kind of the sweet spot for them, and then after that, it kind of gets worse, honestly.
Yeah.
You kind of have to figure out for your climate,
for your product,
where's the spot?
No, exactly. It's like I said, I haven't had their 15. The 13 was great, and I was blind tasted on all three of them by a bartender, and he's like, because I'd never had Pappy, and he's like, oh, we have the 23, we have this. He goes, hold on, let me go pour these in the back because I don't want you to know, and I want you to get your honest opinion on them. So then and I'm like, boom, boom. I would never buy that. It's just
the 23.
The 23, and he's like, yeah,
it's too much oak. It's too woody. Yeah. The 15, there's I believe too the sweet spot. 12 pretty good too, but I like the 15.
So in your temperatures in Kentucky, like you said, after February is where it starts to warm up. You start to get a little bit more warmer climate.
Generally, yeah.
So
I mean, 40 plus anyway. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of out of the freezing temps. So
out of the freezing temps. Yeah. Hell, we get years. We don't get, because we grow almonds, and almonds need so many days of below freezing to go dormant, and so that's been affecting the almond crops too. Is that our temperatures have changed in California? I mean, I don't know if you remember this, Bobby, but like growing up in the 80s and the 90s, every day in the summer was over 100. Like,
man.
Now we don't have those as many days, but when we do, we're not used to them anymore, so they're just hella hot. But part of that is so the climate has gotten cooler here, but part of that is because of the almond trees. So the more almonds they plant, it cools the valley floor. So the farmer's its own demise at this point, right? We're planting too many trees, so we're changing our whole environment. And so but our winters are still not that cold. We're not getting that frost. We used to get fog, tons of fog.
Oh, Thule fog.
We get the Thule fog. Like you literally can't walk out your front door and see in front of you.
Right here.
You couldn't see right here.
Yeah.
We haven't had that in years, but our rains are coming later now. So our whole weather patterns have kind of changed here. So I'm always having to keep that in mind too. So.
Right.
And something, of course, I guess this isn't such a problem where you are, but I mean, certainly you notice it as a distiller, is that, because all your barrels are in rick houses, really to get above that 40 plus mark temp wise, because it's essentially all shade. So you really need 50 plus outside temp to get those barrels kind of working again. And for kind of a sustained period of time. So if you're, dropping into the 30s at night, and that's kind of the thing here in Kentucky is so you may even go into March where you might see mid 50s peak temperature during the day, but then at night it's back down into the 30s. And so your barrels just aren't really doing anything. So
that's what's crazy now. So we're doing 40-degree swing. So it's 104 yesterday. And then it got down in the 60s at 68 at night, like 65, like 40 degrees.
That's a swing.
We never had that before. In the summers growing up, it was 86 at night and 110 during the day.
Yeah.
And now we get these crazy cool evenings. It's such a weird thing. And so, but I've had days where we'll go into the rick house and it's 110, 120 in there because they're metal buildings, so the heat and they're not insulated. But then, per se, in the winter, when they're not insulated and it's 30 degrees outside, they're also getting cooler, but not as cool. We're still, like you said, we're holding that 50-degree range where we're still getting some activity. So, but we didn't have that many chill days this year, so it's interesting to see. And the other thing is too, aging faster here, it's also not necessarily a good thing because nobody's going to respect
the
3-year-old
number on it.
rye.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they want to see the high age
They want to
statement.
see the
Yeah,
high age statement. So it's like,
Yeah.
it's almost like, that, and I think that's what they're up against in Texas is like, man,
Need a handicap.
be ready at 4 years and it's good, but it's a handicap and you got this huge loss. And I mean, we see those huge losses, so we're with it, but we're at least able to sustain it for like 5 to 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
Like if you're having to do that at 4 years and then charge, that kind of money, it's hard for people to swallow. But if you get the fans and your whiskey's good, I'm sure they'll pay for it. So we all have those challenges in our area. That's what's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like Texas is like a cheat code for getting those kind of older age notes at a younger age statement. And so it sounds like your climate's kind of similar to a degree. So that's cool.
Yeah. Say with less humidity, I would say.
We definitely have less. Our humidities are going up, but when we first started, there was never any humidity.
Yeah.
It was pretty dry. And now we get a little bit more. And so I think that's kind of where we're seeing some of those heavier losses. But so we kind of temperature control our rick houses the way we temperature control our sweet potato storages. So it's very similar. So we've almost created humidity because if you keep it too dry, the whiskey can get astringent too if it's too dry. So I did testing with that as well. And so it's like I always have to inject a little bit. Like I have a water cooler in there. And when I feel like, we're adjusting, I'll throw a little bit of humidity and let it run for a little bit. The water cooler will actually create humidity into the building. Because if it just gets 120 in there and there's no moisture, it's just like suck it into that wood and it goes too deep into the wood,
Yeah.
So
is it just like really like industrial, like humidifiers, or how do you guys go about doing that?
Water coolers, like a good old fashioned water cooler, like
nice little swamp cooler,
like a swamp cooler.
Okay.
So the big ass fans. They call that brand big ass fans. Like your water cooler. That's the brand name.
Cooler pads with water running on them. And blower. And sucking in the hot air through the water, and we create humidity into the building.
Yep. Cool. Right on.
So, and that's how we store our sweet potatoes. So here, because we don't have the humidity and we have this dry heat, if we don't temperature control them, they'll start sprouting in the bins, and so then that causes problems. You got to pull the sprouts off. So even in the winter, we're temperature controlling with water coolers because they respire so much heat inside the building that you got to run fans to blow it out and blow cool water cooler air in. It's kind of crazy. People be like, it's winter, it's cold outside. I'm like, yeah, but it's hot in those buildings. They're just respiring and it's so hot. So we want to keep it at 55 to 65 degrees year round. And they'll actually get 80 degrees in the winter time because there's so much heat in the building. So cool. It's kind of an opposite problem. Like you want your whiskey to be warm in the winter and it gets cold, and the sweet potato building, I need to put them side by side where I can suck the hot air out of the sweet potato building and pump it into the whiskey.
Right. That'd be great, right?
And then vice versa in the summer. Like, it's all this planning for the future.
Invent that.
Hey, well, David, Bobby, first off, Bobby, thank you again for having me on. David, good chatting with you. Finally, I've seen you on a couple of the times. Good to finally hang with you, though. My phone is about 1,000,000 degrees right now because I'm streaming over my phone. So I'm gonna have to dip off. But thank you again to both of you, especially Bobby, for having me on. Appreciate you, man.
Hey, send me an email. Bobby got my email. Send it to me.
I will. I'll give him your email.
Yeah, and David, I'd love to have you on, man. And we'll have to work out, get some stuff to Kentucky some kind of way. So
we will
for sure.
Awesome.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Cheers to you guys.
Cheers.
Hey, cheers. Got some 6-year right here. It's good, man. Right here's the proof. Right here, David. thank you for. We'll just unless you got anything else to say.
No,
I mean,
I'm good.
you're the man. You can see already more people want to have you on, and I'm glad that I had a part of that. Hopefully, whatever I can do to help spread the word about these incredible products, man. You know, I'll do whatever I can. I'll help out as much as I can.
No, we appreciate it.
I do have to say, Sarah and Sean, I'm in contact with them a lot, almost on a daily basis. They are both awesome.
Yeah,
I chit chat with Sean about like Spartan races and stuff. We're like have another thing in common. He's always working. I'm like, yeah, what'd you do for this? And like, there's something he had on there today on Instagram. I'm taking to work and I'm gonna have my crew do that workout. I'm gonna see how it goes.
Yeah.
So you have great people working for you. I just want to let you know that.
No, I appreciate it.
From the outside, I know it's good to hear.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear. And yeah, especially salespeople. We lucked out with Sean. He's such a good dude, and he's super passionate about what he does, and that's always awesome. So those are hard to find sometimes. So yeah. We're very grateful for our employees.
That's awesome. I can't
let
you get off
for having us on.
I can't let you get off without giving you 5 axes.
Okay.
That's my crown.
Don't break those bottles. You're scared.
I got this down. I gotta like set stuff up now. I gotta hang on to stuff. All right, here we go. Woo! My goodness, everywhere, yeah. All right, that was bad axe. Thank you very much, David. I really do appreciate it.
Oh no.
Thanks for coming on with me.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, everybody. See ya.
See ya.
You don't mind hanging out for a second after I end this, David?
Yeah, sure.